Let's learn 24 Japanese slang terms that are used by old men in business context. Why? So that you can play this bingo chart that went viral on the Japanese internet a while ago, having fun killing time in your meetings with said old businessmen. So unlike the slang I usually cover, all of these are kind of out of date, but obviously they're still in use, otherwise why would anyone be playing bingo with them? Start with the first one here, that's ichome ichibanchi, which literally means house 1, block 1, and this just means in context something of the utmost importance. In this post here, for instance, you can see somebody responding to a politician's call for the end of paid school lunches as ichome ichibanchi, which just means the thing that they feel is the most important. In context for tackling support to deal with raising children. The second term then is dakubaran, which just means frank or direct. This term can actually be traced back to the 1700s potentially, but nowadays it's kind of considered a non-adjective. So for instance, like this person, you can have a zakubara na hanashi with your colleagues. Number 3 then is enpitsu name name. So this literally means pencil lick lick, and it refers to the fact that old graphite pencils, you kind of had to lick them sometimes to keep writing. And the term here is mostly used to mean cooking the books. That means you're using the pencil a lot because you're fudging the numbers. This person here, for instance, uses the term to question Chinese GDP statistics, although I should know that some people also do use this term just to mean working very hard. This person here, for instance, is using the term to encourage people to study with their children and work hard with them, not embezzle funds with their children. So be careful if someone tells you that they enpitsu name name. They might be embezzling, but they also might just be working really hard. Number 4 then, eiya just means go for it or try your best. Typically, it's used in the form eiya de, which kind of means to do something with spirit, with intensity, with intent. So when this person says eiya de hashita, they mean they ran really hard, although in some cases it can also mean slipshod or lazy, such as this post here. Our 5th term then is koutsu seiri, which literally means traffic adjustment, and in normal Japanese this refers to police control the flow of traffic, etc., to make sure everything moves smoothly. In business slang, however, the term is used to mean going into a complicated situation and making sure everything ends up okay. Since in this post here, someone notes how in their school there is no koutsu seiri o suru hito, so everything's kind of becoming chaotic. O2 then starts with zenin yaku, which means everyone baseball, which sounds like a lot of fun, and just means everyone coming together to do something as a communal act. You can think of it as everybody playing ball in English slang. Here's a simple example of a radio show using it to say that we're all gonna gambarimasu together, and obviously they're not playing baseball. Number 7, yoshanani is then used to mean doing something properly or well to achieve a desired outcome. Interestingly, this is actually used online a lot now to refer to wanting people to follow you or join you. For instance, in this string of posts here, you can see people using it to say, hey, connect with me online if you're a fan of the same stuff I am. But generally speaking, it can just mean do properly. For instance, here, the person in white says a place is hard to get to, so blue should look it up in advance, and blue says that they will do so yoshinani, or, again, properly. The 8th word is kuchusen, which is literally an aerial battle. And in the workplace, this means an argument that metaphorically flies around in the air and therefore nothing gets done. Because nothing was written on paper. So nothing is accomplished, nothing moves forward, everyone's just wasted their time fighting in the air instead of actually moving forward. This person, for instance, talks about some of the difficulties of being disabled in the workplace and notes how that when you're trying to follow along in a meeting and a kuchusen starts, it makes things even worse. Number 9 is then jingi o kiru, which actually comes from the world of gangsters, etc., and in that context means to greet somebody. The actual origin of the phrase, though, is rooted in Confucianism, where it means to do something justly, being adopted by the criminal element because they think that stuff is kind of cool. So while you can see use of this in kind of the Yakuza realm, etc., in the business world it has its own meaning, which just means to do the proper greetings, etc., to make a business plan go forward smoothly. For instance, this person notes how sending the information via SNS is part of their jingi o kiru, or how they're going to get the project done well. Number 10, nigiru, of course, is just a normal word, which means grip. So if you grip something, you nigiru that. But in the business slang, it means to hash out ideas with everyone so that everyone is in agreement. Nigiri, therefore, means groundwork, and nigiranai means not doing the necessary groundwork, as you can see in this image here. And when this person talks about koukyaku to nigiru, they mean working things out with the customers. Moving to row 3 then, we start with naruhaya, which is evidence that not just young people, but old business people in Japan also like shortening words a lot, because this is a shortening of narubeku hayaku. Now, from what I can tell, a lot of people hate this phrase, as you can see by these complaints here, but as for the meaning, it's pretty straightforward. It just means ASAP. Then ittekoi obviously is something you might know as go and come back as a order form. But again, this is a normal term, this is slang bingo. So in terms of business slang, this instead refers to something like swings and roundabouts, or 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, a situation where you don't move forward or backward really. So when this person uses the phrase to talk about this up and down in the graph, you can kind of see where that's coming from. The next word then is roha, and I actually love this one because the origin is a breakdown of this kanji, which is the kanji for tada or free. So by looking at the fact that there's a katakana ro and a katakana ha there, roha has become used to mean free. So when this person talks about a roha na tabi, they're saying that the trip was free. Likewise, in this post you see roha ni suru, which means to make free. Although, oddly, you need to be careful here because roha can also be used by the fandom of the band Astro, as their fan club is called Aroha, which is shortened to roha, as you can see in this post here. Number 15 is tsuka, which is used to mean that two people understand each other really well. This term comes from at least the 1960s, and the idea behind its origin is that it's a shortening of the phrase tsu ieba ka to kotaeru, or someone says tsu and the other person says ka, which, to explain what that is, the tsu is a shortening of toyu koto da, or tsu koto da, and then the other person says to ka. So tsu ka, that's how it is. I see, we get each other. In this post here, for instance, you can see somebody talk about their opinion that Julia Roberts looks like Takayuki Suzui, and they say their husband doesn't get it. The person that replies say, oh, I agree with you. And then the person below says they wanted this tsuka-kan, or feeling of tsuka, connection. Kime no mondai then refers to a situation where there are a lot of options and none of them are great. In this context, the kime no mondai means something you either pass off to your boss or something that as a group you just kind of have to go by feeling because nothing really wins out logically. The person here, for instance, goes with the first definition, explaining it as a situation where there are positives and negatives to everything, so you pass off the responsibility to the person with power. That's kind of a bizarre example in context. Here's someone talking about how names like Jerry can be pronounced a number of ways, so ultimately it's up to the person whose name it is, making it an excellent example of a kime no mondai. Number 17 here is then newaza. This is not the art of sleeping per se, but rather comes from judo, where it refers to ground arts or actions performed to kind of lock your opponent on the ground. So when this person uses it here, they're not using any business slang, they're just saying, like, look at their dog do judo things with their toy on the ground. In the business world then, newaza are kind of an underhanded way of getting things done. You can see an example here where somebody talks about former PM Suga's behavior during the COVID pandemic and calls some of the strategies he used newaza, or underhanded ways to avoid critique rather than solve issues. Gara-gara-pon then originally referred to a type of gambling machine. It looks like this. It's kind of like the bingo ones where you spin it around and something comes out. And in the business context, this therefore just means decide by lottery. So when this person, for instance, says gara-gara-pon de kimeru, they're referring to a lottery to decide. That said, the term can also be used to mean start from scratch. So when this person says garapon saratara, they mean if everything goes back to stage 0, which in this case they say would make things a mess. Gachanko is then another onomatopoeia, and this time the meaning is instead that you take two ideas and combine them into one. This comes from the sound that a stapler makes on paper, gachanko, and you're basically stapling two ideas together. This isn't restricted to the business world. For instance, this person uses the term to just talk about sticking pieces of Spider-Man models together to make a new one, such as in this post here where it talks about taking two different types of people and gachankoing them together to make something that goes above what either of them could do on their own. Number 20 is dama de yaru, and this actually comes from mahjong of all places. Apparently in mahjong, when you have one turn to win, you can either call it out or stay silent, and staying silent is called damaten, which comes from damaru, of course, which is to be silent. Dama de yaru then in business means to move towards victory without announcing it, which doesn't have to be nefarious, but it can be. So in this example, when you can see someone use dama de yaru, they mean moving ahead secretly, quietly, rather than out in the open. Our last row then, we are at the last 5. So let's start with beraichi. This just refers to anything that's one page long, and it comes from the phrase beratto ichimai, or flipping down one page. So when this person talks about making something for the BTS media strategy, and they talk about doing it within a baraichi form, they're just saying that it's all on one image, one on slide. You don't need to go to a second image, you don't need to turn the page, etc. Tsukan koji is then a term that also just exists normally, and it means rapid construction, but within old man business slang, what the term instead means is doing something in a short period of time, which of course makes a lot of sense. So when this person uses it here as tsukan koji suru, they're just saying that they didn't spend a lot of time on it, they're moving as fast as they can. Ponchie then actually comes from the old magazine Punch, which was an old magazine known for its comics in Japan. Ponchie now just means any illustration. So this person here calls an illustration a ponchie, and that's why. Just said don't mix this up with punchie, because that's a picture of somebody punching something. Second to last term is hoten hito. This is the Japanese version of a Texas leaguer, which is a term I had to look up in baseball, and that refers to a pop or boop hit that ends up between an infielder and an outfielder, but nevertheless results in a base hit. In the business world then, this refers to a task that ends up in a place where no one knows whose responsibility it is. Just like a ball that is in between the two people that could deal with it. So, for instance, as a very clear example, this person says, my job goes to here, after here it's your job, right? And claims that this kind of dialogue, this kind of situation is what results in hoten hito happening. Last one is an easy one, shojiki beisu, or honesty base, and that's just honestly or truthfully. Usually in the construction, shojiki beisu de. So when someone says, for instance, shojiki beisu de yuto, they mean if I'm speaking honestly. And that's it. You can now play Old Man Bingo at your office. I hope at the very least this video was more interesting than the boring meetings that you would play this bingo at, but if not, remember that you did watch it for Rohade.